Imagine lying in bed late at night. The house is quiet, the lights are off, the world outside is settled down, and then you hear it. A low sound. Not music, not voices, not traffic passing by. More like a distant engine, or a transformer, or a heavy truck idling somewhere just out of sight. You sit up, you listen, you check the refrigerator, the air conditioner, the ceiling fan, the street outside. Nothing. But the sound is still there. A low, steady hum. And the strangest part, nobody else in the house can hear it. Not your family, not your neighbors, not the people who tell you it must be in your head, but you hear it, night after night. And once you hear it, it doesn't seem to go away. Tonight, we're talking about one of the strangest sound mysteries in the world, a phenomenon reported in cities, towns, villages, and quiet neighborhoods across the globe. Some call it industrial noise, some call it tinnitus, some call it environmental, some call it psychological, and some people simply call it torture. This is the story of the hum, a sound that some people hear, some people do not, and nobody has been able to fully explain. Let's tune in. Somewhere between fact, folklore, and late night speculation, there are stories that refuse to disappear, signals hidden in the noise, legends whispered in the dark, and mysteries that somehow feel stranger the deeper you dig. Welcome to Dead Signal Radio, strange stories from the edge of static. I'm Michael, and tonight we're following a sound that has haunted people across the world for decades. The hum. Is it industrial noise? A strange feature of human hearing? A low frequency vibration traveling through the environment? Or something even harder to pin down? This one's a little different from our first two episodes. Number of stations were mysterious broadcasts. The Black Knight satellite was a modern space legend. But the hum is personal. Because for the people who hear it, this is not just a curiosity. It's in their homes, in their bedrooms, in their heads, in the quiet moments when everyone else says there's nothing there. So let's turn down the noise and listen for the hum. So, the hum is usually described as a persistent low frequency sound. People compare it to a diesel engine idling in the distance, or a low electrical buzz, or a rumble, a vibration, or the sound of machinery running somewhere far away. The details vary from person to person, but there are a few common features. First, it is usually low. Not a sharp ringing, not a high whistle, not the kind of sound you normally associate with tinnitus. More like a deep tone, a drone, a pressure, something you almost feel as much as hear. Second, not everyone can hear it. That's one of the strangest parts. In many reports, one person in a house can hear the hum clearly, while someone standing right beside them hears nothing. Imagine trying to explain that. You're lying awake at 2 a.m., hearing this low sound that feels like it's vibrating through your skull, and the person next to you says, "What sound?" That alone would make you start questioning reality a little. Third, it often seems worse at night, and that may be because the world is quieter at night. Traffic drops, appliances settle, daily distractions disappear, and suddenly the sound has room to exist. Or at least that's one possibility. Fourth, people who hear it often describe it as deeply distressing. This is not just, that's weird. For some people, the hum is exhausting. It interrupts sleep, it causes stress, it makes people feel isolated, and can become almost impossible to ignore. That is something I want to be careful about in this episode, because yes, the hum is mysterious. Yes, it has become part of strange folklore. Yes, it sounds exactly like the kind of thing we cover on Dead Signal Radio. But for people who experience it, this is not just spooky entertainment. It can be miserable. So we're going to keep the mystery intact, but we're also going to treat people who hear it with respect. Because whether the source is external, internal, environmental, industrial, or some combination of things, the experience is real to them, and that matters. One of the earliest famous cases of the hum comes from Bristol, England. In the 1970s, residents began reporting a strange low sound, a persistent rumble, a deep throbbing noise, something that seemed to appear without a clear source. Newspaper coverage helped to bring attention to the problem, and before long, more people began coming forward. This is one of the reasons the Bristol hum is so important. It was not just one person saying, I hear something strange. It became a public issue. People wrote in, people compared experiences, people realized they were not alone. And that may be one of the strangest things about the hum. For many hearers, the moment they discover other people hear it too is both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because it means, okay, I'm not the only one. Unsettling because it means, wait, so what exactly are we hearing? The Bristol Hum became one of the first widely recognized cases of this phenomenon. And like many cases that followed, explanations were proposed. Industrial fans, factories, traffic, power systems, machinery, all reasonable possibilities. But the problem with the hum is that explanations often do not fully satisfy everyone. Maybe a source gets identified, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the sound fades, maybe it continues. Maybe some people stop hearing it, maybe others insist it never went away. The mystery becomes slippery, and the hum, more than almost any other topic we have covered so far, is slippery. It does not sit still. It's a sound people chase from room to room, neighborhood to neighborhood, theory to theory, and in some cases, decade to decade. If Bristol helped introduce the hum to the public, Taos, New Mexico made it legendary. The Taos Hum became one of the most famous cases in the United States. In the early 1990s, residents of Taos began reporting a low-frequency humming sound. Some described it as a distant diesel engine. Some heard it indoors more than outdoors. Some said it was worse at night. Some people were deeply disturbed by it, but others couldn't hear it at all. That last detail created the same frustrating pattern. One person hears it, one person does not, and nobody can quite prove what's happening. The reports became serious enough that a formal investigation took place in 1993. This was not just a few people sitting around saying, maybe it's aliens. A group of scientists and researchers actually tried to figure it out. The investigation involved institutions including Los Alamos National Laboratory, Sandia National Laboratories, Phillips Air Force Laboratory, and the University of New Mexico. That's a pretty serious lineup. You don't bring in that kind of crew unless somebody's dishwasher sounds funny. Researchers looked for acoustic sources, they looked for vibrations, they considered possible environmental causes. They tried to determine whether there was a measurable external sound that matched what people were reporting. And the result? No simple answer. The study did not identify one clear source to explain the Taos Hum, which is exactly the kind of result that keeps a mystery alive. Because if researchers had found a faulty transformer, that would have been the end of the story. Annoying, maybe, but not legendary. Instead, the Taos Hum stayed unresolved, and unresolved mysteries have a way of gathering weight. The more people try to explain them and fail, the more they become part of local identity. Taos became associated with the hum became associated with Taos, and suddenly, a strange, low sound in the desert became one of the most famous audio mysteries in America. Now, does that mean the Taos Hum was supernatural? No. Does it mean the government was broadcasting secret frequencies into town? Also no. At least, not based on solid evidence. But, does it mean something unusual was being reported by enough people that serious researchers paid attention? Yes. And that is what makes it interesting. The Taos Hum sits right in that dead signal sweet spot. Not proven paranormal, not easily dismissed, but just strange enough to keep listening. Now, not every hum case stays mysterious forever. Some appear to have very real, very earthly explanations. One of the best examples is the Windsor Hum. Windsor is in Ontario, Canada, across the river from Detroit. For years, residents reported a low frequency noise, a rumble, a vibration, a sound that affected sleep and quality of life. People complained. Officers investigated. Theories pointed toward industrial activity. And one location kept coming up: Zug Island. Zug Island is an industrial site near Detroit with heavy industry, including steel operations. For years, many suspected that the Windsor Hum was connected to industrial equipment on or near the island. And proving that kind of thing is not always easy. Low frequency sound is tricky. It can travel, it can reflect, it can be hard to localize. And industrial sites are not always eager to open every door and say, sure, Come investigate everything. Eventually, something changed. In 2020, operations at a U.S. steel facility on Zug Island were idled, and reports indicated that the Windsor Hum stopped. That's a very important detail because it suggests that at least one hum case was not mysterious in the supernatural sense. They are mysterious in the practical sense. A sound exists, people hear it, it causes distress, but identifying the source requires money, equipment, access, cooperation, and persistence. And sometimes the answer is not ancient Earth frequency or secret government experiment or interdimensional bass guitar. Sometimes the answer is industrial machinery. And honestly, that does not make the story less important. If anything, it makes it more important. Because it shows that people who reported the hum were not necessarily imagining things. They may have been hearing a real environmental noise that was difficult to prove. And that matters. Because skeptics sometimes jump straight to, it's all in their heads. But Windsor reminds us that real, low-frequency noise can affect real people. And if you are the person hearing it every night, you probably do not care whether the explanation is paranormal, industrial, or scientific. You just want it to stop. To understand why the hum is so hard to solve, we need to talk about low-frequency sound. Not in a boring textbook way. Nobody panic. There will not be a quiz. Low-frequency sound behaves differently than higher-frequency sound. High-pitched sounds are often easier to locate. If the phone rings, you can usually tell where it is. If a bird chirps, you can turn your head and find the direction. But low-frequency sounds are different. They can travel farther. They can pass through walls more easily. They can vibrate objects. They can seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. That makes them very difficult to track. A low hum might sound like it's coming from inside your house when it's actually coming from somewhere blocks away. Or it might seem external when it's connected to something inside the body. Or it could be a combination of both. This is where things get complicated, because the hum may not be one phenomenon. That is probably the most important skeptical point in this episode. There may not be the hum, there may be many hums. Some caused by industry, some caused by electrical equipment, some caused by traffic, ventilation systems, pipelines or pumps, some caused by the human auditory system, possibly by tinnitus-like conditions, some caused by a person becoming hyper-focused on a sound once they notice it, and some are just left unexplained. That is not as clean as saying the hum is caused by this one thing, but reality is rude like that. It often refuses to be neatly packaged for podcast episodes. That's very inconsiderate. But this messy explanation may be the most honest one. The hum may be a category of experiences rather than one single worldwide source. In one town, it might be a factory. In another, a fan system. In another, an electrical transformer. In another, an internal auditory issue. In another, something no one has identified yet. And that makes the hum difficult to study, because two people in two different places may describe similar sounds, but they may not be hearing the same thing. One of the most common skeptical explanations for the hum is tinnitus, or some kind of internal auditory perception. Most people think of tinnitus as ringing, high-pitched tone, a whine, a hiss, something sharp. But tinnitus is not always the same for everyone. Some people experience buzzing, some experience roaring, some experience pulsing, some experience low-frequency sounds. There are also other internal sounds people can perceive, including sounds connected to blood flow, muscle activity, or the ear itself. So when someone says, maybe the hum is internal, that's not automatically dismissive. It's a real possibility. But it also does not explain everything. Many hum hearers insist the sound feels external. Some say it changes depending on location. Some say it disappears when they leave a certain area. And some say other people nearby can hear it too. But then you have cases like Windsor, where an industrial explanation appears very plausible. So tinnitus may explain some experiences, but it probably does not explain all of them. And this is where the topic requires a little nuance, which is inconvenient because nuance is harder to fit into a spooky headline. The hum may be a mixture of environmental noise, low frequency acoustics, human hearing, and local industrial sources is accurate, but it does not exactly slap as a podcast title. So we call it the hum. It's much better. This is the part of the story I think that matters most. This is the human side of the hum. Because the hum is not just an acoustic puzzle, it's a human problem. Imagine hearing something that no one else can hear. Imagine losing sleep. Imagine trying to explain it to friends or doctors or city officials. Imagine being told, there's nothing there. And now imagine that you still hear it every night. That kind of thing can wear a person down. It can make them feel isolated. It can make them feel like they're not being believed. And whether the source is a factory, a medical issue, a house vibration, or something else entirely, the distress is real. This is why I do not like the lazy version of skepticism, the kind that says, people are just imagining it. Maybe some are. Maybe some are misidentifying ordinary sounds. Maybe some are experiencing tinnitus. Maybe some are caught in an attention loop, where the more they focus on the sound, the more impossible it becomes to ignore. But that does not mean they're lying. It doesn't mean they're foolish. The brain is part of reality too. Perception is real. Stress is real. Sleep loss is real. And low frequency sound can be genuinely difficult to measure and locate. So the respectful position is not, everyone hearing the hum is wrong. The respectful position is, something is happening, but the cause may not be the same in every case. That's less dramatic, but it's probably closer to the truth. Of course, the hum would not be the hum if there were not stranger theories. Some people have connected it to government experiments, secret military technology, underground facilities, radio waves, microwave transmissions, earth energies, seismic activity, the Schumann resonance, aliens, and probably somewhere Bigfoot with a subwoofer. I can't prove that last one is not true, but I feel comfortable saying it's unlikely. The government experiment theory shows up a lot in hum discussions, and you can understand why. If a sound seems to come from nowhere, affects only some people, and resists easy explanation, people naturally look for hidden causes, especially when official answers are slow, vague, or unsatisfying. But evidence matters. And for most of the more extreme theories, the evidence is thin. That doesn't mean every official explanation is perfect. It doesn't mean institutions never hide things. It doesn't mean people should blindly accept whatever they're told. But there is a difference between we don't know the source and it must be a secret experiment. That gap is where a lot of conspiracy theories live. And the hum has a lot of space in that gap. Still, I understand why people go there, because we don't know is uncomfortable. Humans don't like mystery when it's in the bedroom at 2 a.m. We want an answer, a name, a switch someone can turn off, a villain, a machine, a source, something. But the hum often refuses to provide that. It stays low, it stays vague, it stays just out of reach. And that makes it fertile ground for theories. Now, probably asking why the hum is so creepy. And the hum is creepy for a different reason than a ghost story. With a ghost story, the fear usually comes from something appearing. A shadow, a figure, a voice, a door moving by itself. With the hum, the fear comes from absence. You hear something, but you can't find it. You look for a source, but nothing's there. You ask other people, but all they hear is silence. That's a very specific kind of unease. It's the fear of being alone with your perception, and the fear that your senses are picking up something others cannot, or worse, that your senses cannot be trusted. That is why the hum gets under people's skin. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not kick the door open, it just exists. Quietly, persistently. It's a sound with no face, no location, a signal without a sender. And maybe that's why it fits dead signal radio so well. Because the hum is, in a way, the ultimate dead signal. A transmission no one can trace. a sound some people receive and others do not, and a mystery that lives right on the edge of hearing. So, what do I think? I don't think the hum is one single explanation. I think the hum is probably a label we use for several different experiences that feel similar. Some cases are probably industrial. Windsor is a good example. Some may be electrical or mechanical. Some may involve low frequency environmental sound. Some may involve the way certain buildings resonate. Some may be connected to tinnitus or internal auditory perception. Some may be made worse by stress, lack of sleep, and the brain's tendency to lock onto patterns. In some cases, may remain genuinely unsolved. That's not as exciting as saying the hum is caused by a secret underground machine, but it's more realistic. Still, realistic does not mean boring, because the hum shows us something fascinating about the world. There are sounds around us all the time that we do not notice. There are vibrations moving through buildings, machines running in the distance, power systems humming, traffic rolling, air pressure shifting, our own bodies making noise, our brains filtering, ignoring, amplifying, interpreting. Most of the time, all of that disappears into the background. But sometimes, something slips through. A low sound, a vibration, a pressure, a hum. And once someone hears it, the world feels different. The quiet is no longer quiet. The night is no longer empty. His silence starts to feel like it's hiding something. That is what makes the hum such a compelling mystery. Not because it proves anything paranormal, and not because every report is unexplained, but because it lives in that uncomfortable space between the world outside us and the world inside our own heads. So sometimes that is the strangest place of all. Well, that's all for tonight. Thanks for spending a little time with me here at Dead Signal Radio. If you enjoyed tonight's mystery, follow along for more strange theories, legends, and late night rabbit holes. Until next time, stay curious. And if you hear static, maybe listen a little closer.